Devin, take the floor, man. We need another all-time classic rant from you, man.
Here's my thing with Houston. I'm not even mad at them signing Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks. That's literally not even the frustrating part of this offseason. The frustrating part was that they decided to just say, fuck developing their young talent that isn't a Jalen Green, a Jabari Smith, an Alperen Sengun. Screw everyone that isn't one of the top-end guys, and let's just semi-commit to winning now because we got Udoka and because we have cap space. They put themselves in a position where they got rid of a first-round pick from a year ago in Ty Washington, a first-round pick from 2 years ago in Usman Garuba, one of their best rotational wing players in KJ Martin, a first-round pick from 2 years ago in Josh Christopher, and a couple of second-round picks. And part of that was to get back Dillon Brooks because they didn't even use cap space to get him. They decided that they should sign and trade to get Dillon Brooks. Despite having all of the cap space, they used it all up before they even got Dillon Brooks. They used it on Fred. They used it on Jock Landale. And then they had to go and sign and trade for Dillon Brooks. It was a very, very weird offseason in that regard. And now you've put yourself in a situation where you didn't move off of some of these vets or some of these young guys just to let Jalen Green have more opportunity, to let other young guys have more opportunity. You brought in a couple of vets. You bring in a Jeff Green who, yes, is good to have in the locker room, but is also going to take up the minutes that someone like an Usman Garuba was going to play. So why didn't you just keep an Usman Garuba? Like, it was very confusing why they just decided to say, let's not care about the youth anymore. I feel like if they had done this a year or two down the road, maybe it would have made a little bit more sense, but they have guys who have shown flashes, or especially in the case of Ty Washington, they haven't even given an opportunity to yet, and they just decided to give up on to compete for the play-in instead next year. Like, especially in the Usman Garuba and Ty Washington case, they move off of those guys to Atlanta for essentially nothing, and they move off of KJ Martin for a couple of seconds, which at this point is what for them? I mean, a couple of extra seconds is not doing anything significant for them. They already have a ton of young talent on the roster. You just traded away young talent that probably isn't going to be better than what you're going to get with said second-round picks. So ultimately, I don't mind signing Fred. I don't mind signing Dillon Brooks. Are the contracts ugly? Yes. Are they bad? Yes. Is the Fred VanVleet contract probably one of the worst deals in the league? Yes. But especially in Fred's case, his salary's off the books before Jalen Green or any of those guys are getting paid. Long term, it doesn't handicap you, so I don't hate it. But it's the fact that you're giving up on your youth so quickly, and now you're putting the youth that's already on the roster in such an awkward spot because Tari Eason or Cam Whitmore could have slid into that starting 3 spot and developed well, but now they're going to be fighting for bench minutes amongst each other as Dillon Brooks gets to start. And now Thompson is going to have Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet. So is Almond starting at the 3 and is Brooks coming off the bench? Or did you just draft a guy in the top 5 of a draft to come off of your bench? It's a very weird scenario they have in Houston. They got a head coach who's been in a win now environment, and they decided they also had to be win now. And I think it's going to be fine for this year, and we're not going to see the repercussions of it yet. They'll be a better team, and they'll probably be in the play-in, or at least in that conversation. But I think they've really limited themselves as far as the direction of this team and having a proper rebuild. I think they were probably a year or two out still. And instead of finishing it off, they'd have decided to cut it short. Let's compete now. And it might end up hurting them in a couple of years when A, they don't have these depth guys that would have developed like KJ Martin, like Josh Christopher, like Usman Garuba. And B, they're probably going to hamper the development of young guys on the team as guys like Cam Whitmore, as guys like Ime Thompson just struggle to get minutes because they just gave a bunch of money to dudes that are going to eat up those minutes. And yes, might be veterans on the team that will help the culture, but is also probably going to impact the development of those guys. That's it for me. But yeah, that's just, it's a weird one.
Well, he cooked. That, man. Well said. It's like they're making moves that like a team that is closer. Like if an OKC did something like this, it would be more understandable. But you're kind of giving up on talent, going and signing guys like Fred, who's good, borderline all-star type good, Dillon Brooks, who's good, giving them big bags, and then just you're going to hinder the development of all your young guys. Jalen Green might not even develop how they want him to. It's just, like you said it so perfectly. They're doing all this to compete for maybe the play-in. A team that has been bottom of the West for the last three or so years, doing this to compete for the play-in. And it's just so frustrating because I feel like every year since they traded away James Harden that they've drafted, I've said after every draft, they were one of the winners of the draft. They did one of the best jobs in the draft. And just to give up on a lot of those guys so early, it's just so frustrating. And to make it where it's going to be difficult for Thompson, for Whitmore, and guys to get consistent minutes and develop, it's even more frustrating, man. I wish them well, but this will probably come back to bite them in the long run for sure.
Bro, this might be my bias, but like I really wasn't even that mad at the Fred signing, and you definitely touched on it in your piece, Devin, of like he'll be off the books by the time people get paid. And he was like, he's a championship winning player. Like he comes from a good system, a good front office, a good organization overall. And I think the Rockets' main goal should have been just to bring order to chaos. There was a lot of talent on the roster, but the common term thrown around is, oh, they just play AAU basketball out there. And it's like, you bring in Fred because, you got to spend that money on somebody, and he could be a decent mentor for these guys, no matter how you feel about his actual talent level right now. He could be good in that role. Bring in Jeff Green. He's going to be good in that role. And then you bring in Ime Udoka, who, for the troubles he's had, is a damn good basketball coach that is a big player coach and can get guys to buy into his system. That was all looking really good, and there was just so much young talent. You're talking about a possible lineup of, Jalen Green, Ime Thompson, Cam Whitmore, and Sengun as like 4 or 5 starters. I mean, can't complain about that. Where they really started going wrong for me was definitely that Dillon Brooks signing and then just getting off of all of their depth young guys. And even if you're giving up on them, it's just, like you said with the Dillon Brooks signing, like he's getting all of these starters minutes. And not only that, when I say bring order to chaos, Dillon Brooks is chaos. He was one of the most chaotic players last season. And for a franchise who's in such disarray, you bring in the guy who the team that he was just on said, yeah, we're not bringing you back in any circumstance. It wasn't, oh, you want too much money, we don't want to pay you $20 million. It's, no, you're gone. You're done. You are not being brought back. That's not the kind of players that you need to bring in. Now, even if they spent more money, if they gave Dillon Brooks' contract to a different guy of a similar skill set who's even older, it's like, oh, man, that does kind of suck. But I do get good older, good mentors, good veterans just to have around these guys before they make money. Say it's another 2-3 year deal. But the Dillon Brooks energy does not seem like a good mix. And I know Memphis's culture that Dillon Brooks was a big part of did lead to a lot of winning, but there was a lot more pieces in place. And while he was sort of the heart and soul of the team, he wasn't even really like a top 2 or 3 player. And even though he would take some shots he shouldn't have, like he was not a main contributor. I feel like because a lot of these guys are so young, who's going to tell Dillon Brooks not to take these shots? Who's going to hold him in check? There's not a Ja Morant to take the ball out of his hands and be like, nah, this is my time. I'm going to take over. Like, yeah, we've seen Jalen Green be a little bit of a shot chucker sometimes. And so that means even with good play, he could take the ball out of his hands. But, like, at the end of the day, this dude is way older than Jalen Green. Like, it's just how it goes. Like, that signing was really what just put a sour taste in it for me, even if the Fred VanVleet contract was objectively pretty poor as well.